Lying flat. It's a movement that started in China, and it's pretty important. It started when a young man just up and quit his job. He refused to keep subjecting himself to the demanding work culture that China imposes. Lying flat. This movement, it occurs in the US too, but it's just not as evident here. The US, it insists it's the best freedom furnisher in the world, the best democracy. But this country, it isn't even ranked among the top 10 democracies according to agencies that track these things. A democracy, it's a system that allows people to have a say in what happens to them, either directly or through the leaders they elect. But if you ask a person if they think they have a say in what happens to them in this country, the answers you get will depend a lot on a person's prospects. A person who is struggling has a more dismal answer than someone who is succeeding. If you ask me if I think this democracy offers me a say in what happens to me, the answer is no. I don't have the say I want to have. I feel as if I got born, just airdropped onto this planet, and happened to land within the borders of the United States, where the atrocities that have occurred here over the last 200 years are supposedly more benign than the atrocities that have occurred in other regions masquerading as habitats where other poor souls get dropped. There's this book I read back when I was trying to fix myself so I could learn to fit into society, back when high school still had a grip on me after graduation, when I thought that joining society might be the best possible option I have to just live in peace, just be like everybody else, sociable, fun. It's this self-help book, this self-psychoanalysis, and this one part gets you to scrutinize the effects that people have had on your life. It gets you to look at each of these people you've known and probe, did this person really have your best interests at heart? So that makes everybody just look like a villain. This ushers in a new era of skepticism where you feel that the only person who has your best interests at heart is yourself, your own conscience, this internal gauge of right from wrong. When I seal myself up in this room here, it's my way of removing myself from a society, let alone a country, that fails to convince me that it has my best interests at heart. This country seems to squeeze the word opportunity into the very definition of obligation. I seem to have the opportunity to be who I am and make the most of myself, and yet this opportunity feels more like an obligation to change myself into someone that society has a use for, a role for. This could be any year in history when a skeptic like me struggles to find a morsel of genuine democracy to voice a say in what happens to me. This could be any election in history where the winner inherits the opportunity to tamper with the current mutation of the word democracy. This democracy, it's hosted by leaders who insist that the best way to get a slice of freedom out to everyone is to organize recipients in a manner that they claim is fair, reasonable, and equitable. And people, for the most part, just go along with this. They believe that they are in possession of their slice of freedom, this invitation to set out and make a good life for themselves. America's got one of the world's best natural resources, cooperative citizens. This cooperation, it starts early in life. Parents teach their kids to follow rules. A parent's don't run looks like a rule that's got a kid's best interests at heart, so he obeys. This don't smack just looks like a rule that leads to dessert. By the time a kid enters school, he is good at supplying the cooperation the school needs. Most kids submit to the school's calm down, don't cry, here's how, that's why. It's a kid's inclination up against the school's implication that if you don't fix yourself and learn to fit in, then you're destined for doom. The message is clear. The school's got no place for outliers, loners, introverts, criers. These holdouts need to assimilate into the school system because the school can't diffuse itself to collect and mend all these weak spots. If a kid can't figure out that there's a proper way to proceed, then he'll just have to get good at navigating the penalty zone, seclusion, timeout, sneers. By the time a kid reaches adulthood and is indoctrinated into the workforce, he knows how the system operates because the school, that boot camp, trained him well. See, America looks like this. There's a proper way to proceed. A person spends his life working hard to achieve success, happiness. A person works. He earns. He buys. He gains. He prospers. Another person. He works, buys, gains, borrows, struggles. There are all these different types of lives, but they all have one thing in common. Everyone is working hard to make a good life for themselves. Society. It's like a tower. People who have the most are at the top, and everyone else is in the middle or at the bottom. This shaft here, it's a vacant drop where none of these people want to be. If you're plunging, you've failed. This lying flat movement has gotten connected to millennials, and I can see why. People on the tower, they are petrified of the shaft, and they see people who are plunging down shaft as bums. Bums who are just too lazy to work, bums who mooch off of parents, bums who play video games all day. According to the tower, these bums reside in a terrain of destitution. This terrain, it's completely off the tower. It's a vast nowhere, a subsphere, and the only time these bums leave the subsphere is to board the tower, to work for short periods of time, just long enough to earn the money to buy toys and supplies, according to the tower, before plunging down the shaft again to hibernate for long stretches. People downshaft in the subsphere, like me, they aren't bums. They are people who are just different. A lot of them just never fit in at school, and they are unlikely to fit in on the tower now. People on the tower, they are people the school trained. This is a person who did well in school, or if they struggled, the school got them to improve. If this was a kid who is, say, shy in school, then the school got this kid's shyness to behave. This kid got good at mastering an oral presentation, and now he is good at mastering a job interview. This tower, one person's life is just fastened to another's. People guard what they've managed to get, and they're always looking up, hoping to prosper. No one is looking down. No one wants to fail. And yet, people do, every now and then, plunge down shaft. But it isn't due to failure. This person, he just doesn't want to be on the tower anymore. This might be that shy person who's just grown tired of delivering that bold version of himself at all those job interviews. He might be thinking that success is a poor alternative to just caving in and permitting himself to be the shy person he really is. He is willing to give up that life he has worked so hard to build and head downshaft, where he'll have an opportunity to foster that shyness of his. See, when a person lies flat in China, he sees that all the hard work he's put in school, and now on the job, it's just getting him nowhere. The boss gains, but this person, he just loses. By quitting, he gains control. He elects to remove himself from a system that he feels just doesn't have his best interest at heart. He is rejecting not only that demanding job he has, but also the society that devised that job. By quitting, he is opting out of a system, a society, a workforce, a government that he detects is manipulating him. By lying flat, he is electing to have a say in his own outcome. He is preserving his own self, his sense of right from wrong. See, people downshaft, they are a lot stronger than people up tower think. They managed to resist the message they got from the school years ago that this, say, shyness of theirs is a defect that's got to get fixed. They seem to know that the school was violating this right they had to be shy, to just be the person they are. When a school halts a kid's inclination to be shy, then the school is halting the freedom this kid has to be the person he is. And if a kid can't have a freedom as fundamental as this, to be the shy person he was born as, then what other kind of freedom could possibly exist? When a kid resists the school's attempt to make him give up his shyness and fit in, this kid seems to be exercising the fundamental right he senses he has to remove himself from a system he doesn't believe in. He'd rather just navigate the penalty zone where he is at least in the company of his own authentic self. A kid who's kicked out of the mainstream at school, he gets used to isolation early in life. The subsphere he arrives at in adulthood, it just looks like more of the same, a sanctuary where he's free to be himself. It is really disturbing when someone who is downshaft, like me, hears someone who is up tower peddle the importance of school. Does this advocate of school even know, is he even aware that the school violates the most fundamental freedom a person has? This freedom a person has to be the person he is, this person he was born as. If a kid in kindergarten can't cry, then what can he do? Surrender his identity, his soul, to the school, this factory that converts souls into people that function properly in society? If a kid can't get this crying to stop, can't get this skin color of his to adjust, can't get this attitude of his to budge, if a kid can't convert himself into the moldable material the school wants so that the kid can become the device the school calls a person destined for a better life ahead, does this advocate of school who resides up tower, is he even aware that the school is training kids to be no more than the workable parts that society runs on? The U.S., this democracy, it insists that it's devoted to the freedom a person has to be the individual he is, and yet there is so little evidence of this. The U.S. seems to be devoted to the freedom it has to coerce people into being individuals that fulfill the government's vision of what an individual needs to be. And the government devises a school system that delivers batches of these goods. The U.S., this democracy, it takes the word opportunity and squeezes out the word obligation. A person has the opportunity to be himself, but this self better be someone that society, the school, the government has a use for. This person had better be able to progress along and comply with the duties he's been trained to perform. And if a person can't do this, well, he'll find himself downshaft, grappling with the consequences that his own resistance brought him. If a kid was born today, no airdropped onto this planet, he might want to try to wriggle himself towards maybe Norway. In the U.S., I have been given the freedom to utilize the opportunity I have to, well, I've declined to be the person the school wanted me to be, so now I live downshaft in what the tower regards as the hollows of destitution. It's this purgatory of freedom. And while grappling with the suffering I've supposedly inflicted upon myself, I can pay the dues everyone pays for living in the United States, whether downshaft or up tower. The service fee for freedom that the U.S. furnishes is high. A frivolous shaft dweller like me is subject to these basics: income tax, jury duty, and registration in the Selective Service. When a kid in China lies flat, his actions bleed a meaning that resonates around the world. Lying flat, this movement, it penetrates every border and reaches someone like me, huddled downshaft in the U.S. Living while authentic is difficult in a country that insists it's devoted to the preservation of liberty and justice for all.